Hi, so welcome, Rebecca. Thanks so much for joining me. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you, Chloe. Thanks so much for having me.
It's really good to chat. I would love you to share with us how you have come to do what you do today, what your journey has been.
Oh, wow, where do you begin with that? Well, with regards to breath work, I've always been really interested in the body, anatomy, physiology. So my first sort of trainings, I was working in advertising and sort of making music videos, did that, in the background sort of for 20 years, but on the side, I was learning massage, body work, and different healing skills. And I used to go to India a lot and practice, trained in Reiki. So all of these like different healing modalities. And I had been living with depression for a long time, like 20 years. So from the age of I guess like 17 or around that age, when it was like people didn't really know or understand what depression was. And so I got myself eventually to a doctor's and they put me on medication, and I was on medication for 15 years. And during those times, like I'd suffer with anxiety and panic attacks as well. But every time that I used to try to come off the medication, it was like a car crash. I mean, I just literally couldn't function. And so then I would go back on the medication, and I tried all of these different, like psychotherapy, CBT, yoga, changed my diet, detox. Just I tried everything that I possibly could to try and get to the roots of depression, which can be very complex. And it was like over 10 years ago now that I was in a really, really dark place anyway. Like with the depression, sometimes it just takes you to a really dark place. And um and I walked into a breath workshop. I had no idea what to expect. At the time, I was working at a really special place called the Special Yoga Center, where I was raising funds for the yoga center because they work with special needs kids, and it's just a really beautiful place run by a lady called Jo Manuel. And so I was really stressed because I had to like raise £100,000 for this amazing event that we were putting on. And yeah, and there happened to be a breath workshop there, and so I just walked into it, didn't know what to expect, and it was so powerful on so many levels. It was very cathartic. It was very physical. Um, I could feel every cell in my body, and I just knew that I'd really found something that wasn't necessarily. I felt. I didn't know exactly at that time, but I felt like I found something that wasn't like just a temporary fix. Like, if you go for a massage and then you feel better, or, you go for a run, you can shift the way that you feel. But with this, I just felt it going a lot more deeper on many, many levels. And so I just kept going back for more transformational breath exercises or workshops, doing one-on-ones and wherever I could really. And very quickly, really, I managed to come off the medication with guidance of my doctor. And I haven't taken medication for 10 years. And so it totally changed my life massively, like in so many ways. Like, that was just the beginning of that journey. And then, it sort of then started to change my life in other ways, and really taught me how to trust my mind and to really become friends with my body as well. And so yeah, came off the medication and then decided that this is what I wanted to teach. And I just went for it and just went for the training, and went to Miami and got to Italy and Mexico and all these wonderful places where they were teaching this work with the founder of Transformational Breath, Judith Kravitz. So I trained a lot with her, and yeah, just had a practice ever since. So that's in a nutshell how I came across it.
Amazing. Amazing how it was, you tried all these other things, but it was breath work that really turned things around. And I do want to know more about how it works and and that sort of thing. But can you explain what exactly it is?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, it's not just about breath work as well. I really think it's like how you it's a really central support system for me, but then it's kind of gets us to become more aware about the way that we're living our life, or the people that we have in our life, or what we're putting into our bodies, or what our triggers are, what our patterns are, what we use to like distract ourselves. And so really it was like, to me, it's like therapy, but without having to do the talking. And, rather than going over and over a story in our heads, which, I was finding some of the therapies that I was going to, like previously, like with some like psychotherapists, I go in there and I talk for an hour and think, I'm not sure kind of what happened there. Or sometimes I'd be like, wondering what to talk about for an hour. And with this, really, it's all about coming out of the mind. I'm not saying that psychotherapy is amazing, and I think there's a combination of all of these things is incredible. So, but for me, it was more about really listening to like the intelligence of my body and what I have been holding on to inside, because depression is just so physical as well as mental. And so with the breath work, what we're doing is looking at how we're breathing and the way that we're breathing, and opening up the respiratory system to its full capacity. And when we do that, then we can start to clear our restricted breathing patterns, because the majority of teenagers and adults are using only a third of their respiratory system. And so we all have breathing patterns, and our breathing patterns are really unique. They're like a thumbprint. And so they really tell our story. They really show where we're at in the world. And so when we can clear those restrictive breathing patterns, then we can let go of like things like physical tension that we're holding on to in the body, trauma, past stories, past tapes, and emotional baggage. And what happens is, when we tend to control emotions and when we control pain, is we tense up and we hold our breath. So that's in the way that our body is like a biological recording of our past, and it's just got all these little sort of, it's like a database or like a computer with all of this information in here. And like, it's like we have armor, like when you talk about people that have body armor, it's like this energetic armor, really, is the way that I like to describe it. And so really just helping to go deep into that with the breath and help to clear that. And then, so what we're doing with transformational breath is using this technique, which is called conscious connected breathing. And then we work with acupressure as well, all over the body, just working with different parts of the body, just helping to release tension there. And then working with positive affirmations as well. So that's also really key, because if you're combining breath work with positive affirmations, then it's helping to reframe those neural pathways as well, as to the way that we think, like, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, all of these things that those little monkeys, gremlins that we have in our heads that can time to time come and tell us, and sometimes can be very loud. And so working with positive affirmations, but also working with movement as well, and sound. So the combination of all of those 5 modalities: movement, sound, affirmations, acupressure, and the breath, it's just really, really powerful.
It is incredibly powerful, because I came to your class on Friday and it's very powerful. It doesn't even compare to anything like a yoga class or a meditation. You really feel like you've had a deep experience and you feel different afterwards. And yeah, I find it completely
I
amazing.
didn't catch up with you, kind of. I didn't have time to catch up with you, but I could see that it was a pretty powerful session for you, but
It was
how was it for
amazing.
you?
So I
Yeah.
had moments where I felt extreme gratitude, and it's almost a weird feeling, because we don't often feel that in daily life, that intense, like, full body gratitude that makes you want to cry. I was feeling incredible, like, gratitude for the whole team that was helping, and I was like in
Mm-hmm.
tears thinking, oh my god, this is like such an amazing experience. I want everyone to be able to have this experience. And other times kind of connecting to sadness a bit later on, and I was crying, and I really felt like something was releasing from my body. It was like in my lungs I could feel like this tension releasing. I don't know if it's the diaphragm or something, but
Mm.
I was crying, and it was kind of like a real I don't know, it felt like my lungs were releasing or letting go of something, and it was
Yeah, well, with
amazing.
the Chinese medicines, theories as well in the lungs, like we hold on to grief, don't we? So
Mm.
when we in the practice like with transformational breath, we're really encouraging people to do a deep diaphragmatic breath, which means that you're breathing using your lower abdominal, so breathing into the belly, and then that way you can really let go of the tension in the diaphragm. So hopefully everybody knows where their diaphragm is who's listening to this, but not everybody does. And it's a large dome sheet muscle that sits under the rib cage, and that's like our primary breathing muscle. And it's like the mothership of for breathing, really, because that's all it's there for. So if like we have tension, which I think maybe you felt maybe in that session, that in the diaphragm, if we're holding on to tension there, then our lungs can't be used to their full capacity as well. So really breathing in that way, and that we were breathing for a long time, weren't we? It was like 2 hours or something. So you're really giving the whole body like a really beautiful massage as well, like all of your organs and all of your muscles, and therefore having like able to have like this emotional release.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And I really like what you said before about depression being very physical. And the same, I think, is true for anxiety. It's such a
Mm.
physical issue that it sometimes feels as if trying to do I don't know, for example, cognitive behavioral therapy technique, although I think they're amazing in certain
Yeah,
situations and for some people, but to try and just think your way out of feeling depressed or anxious is not going to cut it, because this thing is in your body. It's like an energy of fear or an energy of sadness that almost needs to be released. But
yeah.
you can probably say it better than I can.
Well, no, because you're pretty expert on this as well. So, and you explain it beautifully. But I mean, I think the thing with anxiety and with high anxiety and maybe depression as well, um, is that it is such a physical thing. So sometimes anxiety will arrive in the body before it even does in the mind. I mean, have you ever experienced that? I know, like, kind of when, like, for me, like now I'm fine talking in front of big groups. It's like it's not something that I'm terrified of. But back in the day, I would do anything to not talk in a even a small group. Like, would run a mile. And like what would happen to me, like even before as people would ask me to speak, I could feel like my solar plexus. I don't, like everyone gets anxiety in different parts of their body, don't they? But for me, it was like always in the solar plexus, and it would just start pumping really quite loudly, and then like almost like you could physically see it like coming out of my jumper. And then sometimes, when you feel hot or you feel a bit shaky, and some people, and they're getting anxious, like they'll start to get red, like all up their neck, won't they, all in their chest as well. So in the way, because I guess because with the body, the blood pressure is starting to rise, and your body's telling you it's activating the sympathetic nervous system, and it's getting ready for, to flee or to fight. Um, and so when that's happening, like you say, rather than go with the minds going, okay, just think positive thoughts, you're going to be fine, just calm down, but all of these things, but actually you'll be like, but my body's not calming down quick enough with what my mind is telling me to do. And then that can make you feel even more anxious, because it's like it's almost like the mind is I think so. I think what some people, the way that they, if, with anxiety, I think sometimes people get really angry with their anxiety, and they get really frustrated with it, and then rather than be gentle with it. And I think that's like my biggest lesson, and what I like to kind of share with people as well, is that if you can be more gentle with those feelings, like in a way that you would be gentle with a child. It's no good and say, oh, just get on with it, go on, get up there. It's just like, kind of, if you can just be really gentle and hold that space for that anxiety, then it's going to know that it's safe, or it's safer. And that's where the breath comes in. Because if you're breathing, if you start practicing and you start breathing using deep diaphragmatic breathing, and you're breathing into the belly, and slowly and deeply, then the messages from the brain to the body, and the body to the brain, is that you're activating the parasympathetic nervous system. So when you activate that, via the vagus nerve. Like, do you know all about, I don't know if you've been talking lots about the vagus nerve, but the one that controls like the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. So when you breathe deeply into your belly, then the message is that you're going into more of a relaxed digest state. And so the body then starts to calm down with you, and then the mind can start to focus as well.
So interesting. I was thinking about this because I think after the session, I've become a lot more aware of my breathing, and I've noticed there was a time, I think it was earlier this week, that I was doing some filming, and I was in kind of a studio with hot lights and things. I noticed, oh, like you're not breathing properly because you're a bit, it's a bit of an intense situation when you're being interviewed. And I was really kind of aware of that and trying to make a conscious effort to breathe more deeply. And so, yeah, I suppose for people listening, should they be trying to be aware of how they're breathing during the day? Is there a way to do that?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's like, if you're feeling like particularly anxious, like especially in a situation like that, or if it's intense, isn't it? And so you're literally under the spotlight, weren't you? So a really nice method is the box breathing method, which is what SAS use when they're in highly stressful situations and they need to tune in and they need to focus. So that's isn't it amazing now that the SAS are now using like breathwork techniques, yeah, and practicing yoga as well. And so it's just really broadening to such a wider spectrum, as opposed to kind of like a few years ago when it was like considered a bit more maybe new agey. Like now it's just like corporates and so on. But when you're working with box breath, then again, always breathe into the belly. So like the foundations to all breath work for me is, are you using your lower abdominal muscles? Because you have a little diaphragm in your pelvis, not just under your rib cage. There's one in the pelvis, there's one in the pelvis that's helping to breathe, and then there's one just at the back of the neck as well. So your breathing system is from here all the way down to your pelvis as well. And so breathe. When you inhale, then you push your belly out as you inhale, and then the belly comes in as you exhale. And then you count inhale for 4 as you're pushing your belly out. So inhale 1, 2, 3, 4, and then hold for 4, and then exhale for 4, and then hold for 4, and then inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4. So that's why it's like in a box. And that's something that you can do around people without people necessarily noticing that you're doing it. And then you can just feel like your whole state change. It's like how you can change your feeling states very quickly by just changing the rhythms of your breath. Like you can change from feeling really stressed to feeling relaxed, from feeling really scattered to feeling focused, from feeling really tired to feeling energized, just by using different breathing techniques. But really, like every day, if people just like, another biggest thing, what I notice with people is that when they're breathing and they take a deep breath, then their shoulders immediately go up and then down. And it's just like, you do not need your shoulder muscles and you don't need your neck muscles to breathe at all. So really, rather than imagine that the breath is kind of traveling up and down or it's vertical, imagine that the breath is expanding in and out. So if you can just change that, because you've only just got to look at a baby and look at a toddler, or even like we've just got a little puppy and she's so sweet, and when you look at her breathing, she's got the perfect breath where it's in the belly and it's just coming in and out like a wave. But with babies and toddlers, their breath is also like that. So it's in the belly and it's in the midsection and it's in the chest and in the back, and it's coming in and out like a wave. And it isn't until the reason why that is because when you're a baby and a toddler, you do not care what people think about you, and you express exactly how you feel, and you're really present and you're just in the moment, and it's just, so you haven't got this tension, you're not holding your breath, you haven't actually experienced feelings of fear yet as well. There's feelings of guilt or shame or not fitting in. So it's not really until we're 3 to 7 when we emotionally develop, and then we start to become more aware of those things, which of course, is handy. We need to know when things are hot or when things are dangerous and so on. But also, we start to hold our breath, and that's how our breathing patterns change. So really it's about remembering how you used to breathe when you were a baby and when you were a toddler, and just getting the body to reset and rewire. And the more you can do that every single day, just very simple, strip it back, breathe in your belly, be present with your inhale and present with your exhale, and just keep trying to let go of those thoughts and keep allowing the mind to wander to the breath. Then each time you're doing that, you're just reminding the body how to breathe properly.
I love that. I love that. So breathing into the belly, box breathing, breathe like a baby,
Yeah,
basically.
absolutely. Or a puppy as well, or a dog. Actually, all dogs seem to have like a really lovely breath.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
Mm.
When it comes to actually processing trauma, then
Mm.
how does that work in terms of breath work?
Um, it's really complex, isn't it? Trauma, I think we experience trauma. Everybody experiences trauma in some form, in some way, on a mental, emotional, physical level. Whether that be an accident, or if you fall over, or if it's mental, or if it's emotional. Um, and again, I think with breath, like, when I'm working with people with PTSD, or when I've worked with people that have served in Afghanistan, for example, and like stuff like they can't necessarily talk about. And so it's like when we suppress feelings or we repress feelings, then we bury them, we push them, we hold our breath, we push them, we hold those inside. And that takes a lot of energy to hold that inside. And then that emotion, like kind of, if trauma, sometimes can come out in other ways, like anger. Um, and so, with the breath, it's just really helping us um, to go back to like that where those heavier suppressed emotions are being held in the emotional body, and then to feel like a safe place where we can actually breathe into them and then help to release them. Because when you're going deep into breath work, and when you're going on this breath journey and you start to integrate the breath, then it takes you into a space where it's almost like it's just backtracking. Backtracking, it's like unlocking like little doors that maybe we've closed, or doors that we've shut. And I mean, it might be easier if I just explain it to, like, for example, a really lovely lady who I know won't mind sharing this story, but how she had claustrophobia for years. And she had claustrophobia from the age of, she's now 70. And when she was 4 or 5, she was sent to boarding school with nuns, with her sister. And when she was, in inverted commas, like badly behaved, she was put in a cupboard by the nuns, and then they forgot about her, and she was left there overnight. And so by the time they found her, she was severely traumatized. And thankfully, she got taken out of that boarding school. But she has done everything since then in life to avoid being in a small place. So when she was, so being in a toilet, she could never lock the door, because her body is remembering that is danger. It's that, that intense time. It's just like her body just is overcome with like, there is no way I'm going into a small space. And again, like going into lifts, she would always take the stairs. She would like literally put her trolley in, like if she was going to Safeways at shopping, she put the trolley in on one level, run up the stairs to meet it at the next level. All of these things she's been doing her whole life to avoid being in small spaces. And she had to go for an MRI scan, which is why she came to meet me and do some breathing sessions with me, because it was like a life or death situation, and she wanted to be here to see her grandchildren. And so she was going to have to go into this very confined space to have an MRI scan. And after 3 sessions, we just really, working with the breath, working with these positive affirmations, helping to release that fear. She was able to have their MRI scan, and actually using the breathing exercises throughout it as well. And she was absolutely fine. So,
Wow.
um, there's many stories, and I kind of like some of it. I it's I just to me it's the magic of this work as well, and then there's the science of this work too. And some of it is, sometimes when we want to know the whys and the hows and the science and all of these, but actually it's really the stories and the case studies and the results that I get that kind of prove to me again and again that this work is just, you know our breath is like such a strong medicine, and it's just way more powerful than we, inhaling 20,000 times a day. And it's we unconsciously do it, but we can also consciously breathe as well. It's the only system in our body that we can do that.
Mm.
Um, and somewhere along the line, like the yogis in the East and the Buddhists, they've known this for thousands of years, but in the West, it's like we've forgotten that. And I think a lot of it is to do with because people are just so disconnected. They're just really disconnected, so therefore they're not connected to their breath. And so it's there's just that starting point of getting connected into your body, which is, like I say, is so intelligent, and understanding that it's not just the mind that is running the show, basically. Our heart has 40,000 neurons or something communicating to the brain, and the gut has got millions of neurons as well. So everything's communicating to each other via the nervous system. And those old sayings like listen to your gut, they've been around for years, haven't they? Without really asking why.
Yeah, wow. Okay, so it's about connecting to our bodies and releasing some of the stuff that we've kept inside. We've either shoved it down because we don't want to deal with it, or our body has remembered, a fearful situation that it needs to process that in a way. Is that
Yeah,
right? Yeah, because
yeah, because it's like armor, isn't it? It's like we have like that armor around us, like sometimes um I guess like sometimes when you really tune into your intuition and your senses as well, like sometimes when you're not comfortable around certain people, you think, oh, why is that? But a lot of it is because we're just being triggered all the time by past memories. And if we can just clear those memories that we're carrying, then we're not we can just be more present and just more comfortable in our own bodies.
yeah, I suppose that's so relevant for people with anxiety because it is so much about those triggers. So you get on the tube, and because you had a panic attack before in the tube, you feel panicky again, or in social situations you blushed once, and so you're in a social situation again, and that gets triggered, and we do need to
Mm,
kind of process that.
yeah,
Um, and I'm really convinced from what I've learned over the years about anxiety that we have to address anxiety at a physical level, because it isn't enough just to even meditate, even though that's one of the things that I think is most effective. We need to do something physically
yeah.
to release this stuff and process it.
Yeah, yeah, because it's like with meditation as well. When you're practicing breath work, it can really help you to expand your meditation practice or your yoga practice as well, because you're looking at the patterns of your breath, and so you're opening up your breath more, so that then you can work on that much deeper level. Because with me, with transformational breath or connected breathing, it's like really it's I just think it's for people who find it, well, not just for people who find it hard to meditate, but it's really useful for people who find it hard to meditate. And also, we want to kind of get things solved quite quickly. And for me, with transformational breath, it's like I tried so many different techniques, but this just got there, and it got to the source, and it got there really quickly. So, but it's like one of those things, once you start digging, there's always a little bit more digging to do, isn't there? And yeah, but with regards to anxiety, I think that, like you say, it's such a physical thing, and it just holds people back, doesn't it, from doing stuff. It can hold people back their whole life because of anxiety. So if you can not let, if that's not any longer in control of you, then you're able to live life more fully, aren't you?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think it's worth remembering that there is so much we can do. There is so much we can do if we are just brave enough to do a bit of work and to explore things and try things like breath work. And I'm wondering, what would you say to people who might be feeling a bit nervous about coming to something like breath work? Because it might be,
Yeah,
for some
no,
people, a bit
it's
overwhelming or out of their comfort
yeah.
zone.
It's really good that you say that, because I think that um, again, it's like just treat, with anxiety, to really, really treat it gently. And there's some people who have really, really high anxiety. Like some people have such high anxiety they can't even get out the door. And if you are going to a breathwork class, don't feel embarrassed to let the teacher know first that you have high anxiety. You don't have to share it with the whole group. But it's important to kind of check in and do some research with the people that you're working with. Because we know it's like with this work that I do, it is very physical, and it's powerful as well. But we always hold like a really, really safe space for people, so that, because if you've experienced panic attacks, sometimes in breath work, maybe it will feel like maybe that you'll feel like maybe some of that's is coming back on again, but it's just the body's way of going back to that and then breathing into it and breathing through it. Um, but just to start with anxiety, remember, like, there's that place where I think in the workshop which I shared with you, if you put your thumb into your solar plexus, which is just underneath the sternum, um, which is your chest bone, so not never on the bone, but if you put your thumb into there, you can do some gentle acupressure yourself, and just start learning, just breathing very, very deeply into the belly. Get yourself breathing in the belly first, because so many people cannot get the breath down there at all. And I find that so many people, especially with high anxiety, are breathing in their chest, and they've got really, really tight diaphragms as well. So if you can start doing, like in my book, there's tips on, like, kind of starting with crocodile pose, so lying on the floor, and so that you can feel your belly on the ground touching the floor, so as it's breathing in and out, and then you can just slowly retrain it and get it to breathe down there.
Brilliant, brilliant. I love a bit of acupressure. That feels good actually to do that.
Yeah.
Um, just to share another experience that I had for people listening, I have a history of panic attacks, and the first panic attack I had at 15 was very traumatic. I really thought I was dying. I didn't feel like I recovered from it for about 2 years. I felt very anxious afterwards.
Mm.
And when I first did breath work, in a way, it was a little bit not like a panic attack, but you kind of have that because you're breathing a lot and you get sort of slightly tingly because you're breathing. But it was learning, for me, it was learning to be okay with that sensation and to kind of just surrender to the experience and to relax into it. That almost felt like I was coming full circle for that
Yeah.
panic attack and kind of closing the loop in a way and healing from that experience because I could just let go and kind of go with the experience. So for anyone that's has issues around kind of breathing or panic attacks and things, I think it could be a really healing experience to do something like breath
Yeah,
work.
because it's really scary, isn't it? And you've come so far from that as well. Like you said, like that was 2 years that it just knocked you, and and you don't want it to happen again. So it's like we just do everything that we possibly can to avoid that from happening again. And then, like, if you come into like a breathing session and breathing workshops, like, I always say to people, there's going to be resistance, and the mind is going to take you straight up there, and it's going to go, I don't think this is working, or I don't think this is right for me, or I don't like how this is feeling, I just want to get out of here, or just pretend I'm breathing and then I'll leave. It's just like, because the mind is very dominant. It's also very fragile. It's also very beautiful, but it's always trying to protect us and defend us. And um, and so really, it's just like, letting it know that it's okay. I've got this. I've got this. I'm working with my breath. and I'm going to trust this, and I'm going to surrender into it, because it's that thing about, I think, it's losing control, isn't it? It's like
Yeah.
if you have a panic attack, it's like I've you completely have lost control, and it's really scary. And so the control like mechanism, or the control voice, or whatever it is just gets very, very strong. And so as human beings, most of us really like to be in control. And with this work, it is all about letting go and trusting and surrendering, and that's not always easy to do. And I really respect that. It's like it's not an easy thing to do, but the freedom that you get from that when you do let go is so worth it.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing everything that you shared. I think there's some really practical things that people can be doing, and I just really want to encourage people listening to explore this. If you think any of this resonates with you, get in touch with Rebecca, check out her workshops and her book. Where can people find out more about you and what you do?
Well, my website's breathingtree.co.uk. So on there, I have all my workshops listed on there. So they're monthly, usually at Derby Yoga in Marylebone. And I see people for one-on-ones at Derby Yoga as well, Tuesdays, Wednesdays. And then lots of events coming up and retreats. And they're sort of going to be posted up over for what's happening this year. And my book, And Breathe, you can buy that on Amazon. So yeah, thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Chloe. So nice to do this at last.